Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Master Chess Web Show. And today we've got another 3 games for you. Now, we also have an extra feature on our website, which I'm going to show you now. And the website is here, and it's called masterchesswebshow.com. Now, we're going to be putting some of our videos up from in a couple of weeks' time, because we're going to increase the number of shows, and one of these will always go up on YouTube, but the other 2 will not. Now, the important thing here is if we scroll down, we've got our Twitch TV channel here, and so I hope everybody is going to follow us there, or we could do with more followers really. YouTube, please subscribe to our channel and like our videos. Please do that. It will really help us. And then finally, we've got the contact form, which if we click on this, we've got a form with which you can send us any questions, because we would like to try and tailor the shows around viewers' questions,
providing they can select the cup. This is very important.
Yeah, and we need to do a bit of preparation. Right, a bit of preparation will help us a lot. So if you give us a few days, then we'll be able to answer questions, because we do actually prepare material. We don't just play 5-minute chess. Yeah, in fact, we're not playing any 5-minute chess. So I'm going to hand over to. Am I going to do the first game?
You are.
Right, I'm going to. Oh, right, good, because I've got some good Tal anecdotes. I've got one good Tal anecdote. So, okay, I'll do the first game, and then we will take it from there. And the first game we have is a game between Tal and Ullman. And I forget where this was played. Where was this played, Andrew?
I think it was the Alekhine Memorial in 1971. Let me just check that out. I think that's correct. Okay. Alekhine, yeah, in Moscow.
Okay. So we have Tal playing e4, and then Ullman always played the French defense. Now, the thing I don't like about this game is that it's the French losing very quickly. Because those who know me
hammered.
got absolutely annihilated. Now, in the good old days, this could actually happen, because people didn't have all their openings, like cloud engine checked. Well, it can still happen now, but you've got to play like 1A3 if you want to win in less than 20 moves, and put your opponent on their own resources. So this game was played in the pre-preparation days. Mikhail Tal had probably prepared this line with his mates, and we have Ullman playing c5. Now, Ullman used to like to take on the isolated d pawn. If you took on d5 against him, he would take back that way and get some free play for his pawn. The other way to do it, which I tend to recommend, is to take with the queen, and then you get the world's best Scandinavian defense, which I think Andrew will be able to tell you more about in due course. The Scandinavian is e4, d5, queen takes d5. This one, we've got white to put his knight on c3, and we have our c5 freeing lever in already. So Tal played knight gf3, which is a much more complicated approach. And he goes knight c6, bishop b5, and this is the old Alekhine variation, which is quite appropriate given it was the Alekhine Memorial in Moscow. And it leads to quite a tense game. Now, I'm not quite sure what went wrong with Ullman's play. C takes d4 these days is the main move, followed by a6. And d takes e4 is relatively rare. It's still played. Knight takes e4, and now black unpins with bishop d7. But the suspicion is here that you might be losing quite a bit of time. Now, white goes bishop g5, and black plays queen a5 check. This is still all very standard stuff, although queen b6 has also been played here. Queen a5 check, knight c3, and c takes d4 still appears to be playable. a6 has been played as well. I think it was probably since this game. I can see there's a bunch of games down here played after 1971. And now white plays knight takes d4. And this is where black should probably just play bishop e7. Well, if you play bishop e7, then that's quite a reasonable move. Now, instead, Ullman decided to put his bishop on b4, perhaps hoping that Tal would take this threat to take on c3 seriously, and defend somehow. But Tal did not defend. He just castled, and he's offering a pawn sacrifice here in order to accelerate his development. And this was a really very, I don't know if the word is brave that we can describe the pawn snatch as. Was this brave or just plain foolhardy against somebody who is widely thought to be the greatest attacking player in history? He takes the pawn.
Well, it shows a lot of courage from Ullman to do that. But of course, it is incredibly risky with the black king still in the middle and the white king safe. This is a good game to show to groups of individuals who want to improve, because it proves beyond doubt the value of castling. You know, if you leave your king in the middle, and almost certainly against the greatest attacking player ever, you're going to get wiped off the board, unless you've got some sort of miraculous resource available, which Ullman doesn't actually find here. Now, the next move, of course, is a bit of a thunderbolt. Did Ullman see it, or did he miss it completely? I mean, it's quite sort of naive to say that Grandmaster would miss it. Pardon me?
I think he might have missed it because, you know, I mean, everybody, when they're playing Mikhail Tal, did you ever play Tal?
I did. I played him, let me see, how many? 3 times, but not in serious games. I played him twice in a 15-minute tournament, I think, in Glenrothes in Scotland. And I played him in a simultaneous display when I was a kid.
Okay.
I didn't get any points at all from these games.
Well, he was quite a dangerous guy. I played him in only one serious game. Right, that was in a tournament in Israel, when he went there to get his teeth fixed. Right, so he was getting dental treatment during the tournament. Right, and he came in one day with this beaming smile, you know, because he got all his teeth done, and it was quite. Not many people know that, but it was very funny. Well, I met him. I went with my friend Lev Sarkis, and we went to say hello to him in his hotel room. Right, and it was like early afternoon, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he was obviously the worse for wear. He was wearing a shirt, a vest, only a vest, you know, with a cigarette in his hand. It was like always there, and he invited us in. He wants to play blitz and drink the rest of the day. Lev declined on our behalf. I was thinking, yeah, I'll go for that. But Lev Sarkis declined for us.
I remember when I played him.
Sorry?
I remember when I played him that, you know, there was nothing he did which I didn't understand. It all seemed very simple. You know, he developed his pieces very quickly and efficiently, almost always to their very best squares. And you had to match that simplicity. And if you couldn't do that, he'll get to a certain position where his advantage development would tell, or some sort of strategical advantage would tell, and then he'd wipe you out.
Yeah. Well, it was the out calculation that was a big thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll tell you the story about our game. Right, he was in big trouble in the opening, which is unusual for one of my games. For my opponent in big trouble, and he fought his way out. Right, And we got to this position where I was a pawn down, but he was tied up still. And I played this move, king h2, and offered a draw. Right. He then thought for absolutely ages before accepting. Right. And as soon as he'd accepted, he started showing me all these lines. Now, I reckon that he was always going to take the draw, but he decided he was going to show off at the, you know, about how much he'd seen, because I was like gobsmacked, you know, this is really going on. Because it looked like a simple position, but he showed me some incredible lines. And immediately after he took the draw, right, and he said, and this position is about equal. Like, so it was like a joke by him, you know, that he was sort of, you know, showing how much he'd seen, and that this position was. Actually,
I honestly don't think he would have done that to brag. I just think that was him, you know.
No, it's in his notes as well. You get him like showing brilliant lines in his notes, but they're there kind of gratuitously. He's not trying to show the objectively best line. He's just trying to show like a sacrifice or something. So I do think there was an element of him, you know, showing off a bit.
Well, maybe.
So I during my Taimano book experience, I did annotate this Tal game, which was one where he got into trouble in the opening and then defended brilliantly with some, you know, but there were sacrifices in the background. And it was like he couldn't wait to show the sacrifice, even though, you know, there were several better moves along the way for both sides. He went straight in and tried to show that line. Maybe it could be he just loved chess, and he loved the, you know, the dynamics of sacrificing pieces or anything. Anyway, I think we've given the readers, the viewers, plenty of time to see the next move if they haven't spotted it on the screen.
I should mention one further thing. When I actually played him in Glenrothes, they had this. It was basically a lot of Scottish players, the best Scottish players, and then Spassky, Suba, and Tal as the major invitees. And I was lucky enough to get an invite as well, because I played in Scotland a lot and did quite well in the tournaments. And they had this like VIP suite. It was held in some sort of industrial hangar, as chess tournaments are generally in the UK. You know, but they had this VIP suite, a little room off from the main playing room, where a lot of Scotch whiskey was available. And you would see Tal retiring to this suite regularly after each game and topping up his glass. So, I mean, it could be that at the time he played me, he was completely blotto, you know, or not blotto, because Tal could drink a lot, but, you know, the worse for wear, let's put it that way. He had no respect for his health whatsoever after a certain point, did he?
No, he was, yeah, I mean, I think he's somebody that was probably damaged, first of all, by life in the Soviet Union, you know, because when you live in a totalitarian state, it's not that much fun. And the second is he had a congenital deformity on his hand. So he had like his fingers joined together on one hand. So I think that, you know, it must have been tough at school with, you know, with that. You know, it adds up. I mean, he was absolutely brilliant. You know, there's famous stories about his memory, you know, being able to remember. There was one story, I think his father was a doctor, and he was going to give some talk or something, and Tal gave the talk for him. He remembered the whole paper. Right, just memorized it word for word. You know, it's just incredible. And you know, I think it helps to have that kind of talent. If you're going to play chess, it's really useful. It's all very well being a hard worker, but you know, it does help to be a genius as well.
Yeah, I guess the trouble with having talent of that nature is that it's unruly, you know, and if you don't have people to help you, you can really get into serious emotional problems. And we see it time and again in the chess world, the same manifestation, you know, people with emotional difficulties. And yeah, it's not easy to deal with or to handle having enormous intelligence, is it?
I wouldn't know. You speak for yourself. So
I've got a grip on it. Don't worry.
Okay, well, that's just as well. So okay,
better get on with this game.
The next move is this absolute thunderbolt, knight f5. Right. Well, the idea is obviously going to d6 check or take, into d6 check. And
you think Allman missed that? I tell you what, I think Allman missed bishop d2 a bit further down the line. We'll see that in a moment.
Okay.
Keep going.
So the question is, what happens if you take? Well, he decided to open the box.
Does he not have to take? He's got to take, surely.
Well, you've got a note in here. You've got a note with queen c5.
Oh, allowing check.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm going to.
I must have had too much Scotch whiskey to put that note in.
You're probably trying to channel Tal. So rook e1 check. Right. So if you interpose with the knight, then white can just he can take on c6, let's say.
Well, rook takes knight's not bad.
Yeah, rook takes knight's pretty good as well. But I was just trying to be Mr. Sensible. So bishop e6, and now this move, queen d6, which is a quiet move, asking black what he intends to do next. Now, this is not an easy move to calculate, and bear in mind that you've got to calculate it 2 moves earlier, because the threat, I believe, well, he wants to go rook a d1, and then
checkmate.
Yeah, and then checkmate, basically.
Something very crude and vulgar.
Well, it's very complicated, and it's very difficult to calculate because black has got so many possible moves here. I think this would be a good, if anyone likes doing things like the Kotov analysis exercise, right, from Think Like a Grandmaster, which I actually did as a teenager. Right, I was trying to find positions like this and then try and calculate it out according to the Kotov model, which I no longer believe in. But you're supposed to look at all the candidate moves for your opponents and then calculate along these different branches until you find the solution. Have you ever done that exercise?
Well, I think when Think Like a Grandmaster came out, it was regarded as a classic, and everybody bought it. And I tried to do it. Didn't seem to work for me. I don't know why. I just found it laborious.
It is laborious. I mean, I was like, in our dining room writing down these lines or whatever, and it was, I was thinking it's just never going to end. But
I mean, it's okay if you're living in Siberia and you've got nothing else to do in some hut, but
I was living in Shankland.
If you've got a normal life,
in a semi.
It takes too long.
Just similar. So the lines here, knight f6, right? That makes sense because you're developing the knight. And knight e7 doesn't make sense because it's mating 1 with queen takes e7. So you can see I did the Kotov exercise just from that. So knight f6, rook a d1, another natural move, and now.
Well, he's threatening rook takes e6 now, isn't he? And then f takes, queen takes, and then bishop c4. I think that finishes black off. It didn't before because black could take on a1. But
right. What about knight d8, queen e7, mate?
I believe so. No.
Yeah, that's mate. So yeah, and you can't play rook a d8 because of queen takes d8, mate, because the knight is pinned, and you can't castle, and you can't play queen b4, and you can't play knight e4 because of queen e7, mate. And if you go h6, then white does this.
Why can't you just play that same combination? Rook takes e6. Wouldn't that work?
Can black play queen takes c4 and then h takes g5?
Oh, wow. You have to show that because it's complicated for the listening.
Well, they can always
Yeah, maybe. That's a lot of pieces for the queen, isn't it?
With a rook and 2 knights for the queen.
Yeah.
So that may be.
Black could be winning.
Yeah. So h6, you go this way. And now rook here is okay because queen a1 check, you can meet by bishop f1. And then if black plays knights, if he defends f7 with knight e5 or knight d8, you go queen e7 and queen g8, queen g7, mate.
Yeah, beautiful.
So queen d6.
This is chess logic, isn't it? Black's a piece up nominally, but in fact, white's got 2 extra rooks in play. So he's overpowering black in dynamic terms, isn't he?
I wouldn't want to sacrifice the piece based on that. I would actually, want to. It would take me ages. I mean, one thing I've noticed is that if you get somebody, I don't know, like Dwayne Jones or Vacher Le Grave or someone, they calculate so much faster than I do. Right, this is a big advantage. So it means that if you go into a sort of calculative game against someone like that, then you're just asking for trouble. And there are players who calculate more slowly. I would say Bareyev probably calculates less quickly than some of the other players who've been at the top. Maybe also Botvinnik and Portish, right? But they would have to have something else instead. Portish was constantly outplayed by Tal in complications, and I think he probably worked really hard on his tactics, but he still was never at quite the speed of somebody like Tal or probably even Stein. And
don't you think these days we're using engines all the time? You having a playing partner of 3,300 or something, you're bound to pick something up, which increases your speed of calculation.
Yeah, it helps a lot. So working with engines, I think one of the main benefits is not that you memorize all the moves that they tell you, but it does start to speed up your thinking. Well, it hasn't speeded up mine very noticeably, but I'm still at tortoise level here. So queen d6. So knight f6, rook a d1, a6. Right, this is a line where now, if we go rook takes e6 check, pawn takes, queen takes check, king f8, bishop c4, what happens there? Because we've got a line here with bishop d2, but we were thinking that this might be good.
Yeah, once the rook's on d1, that works, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's not the variation that is in the notes.
No,
because we've got bishop d2 in the notes. But
yeah.
Maybe this is good too. And then bringing the bishop round here.
Well, he's threatening mate in 1.
Yeah.
That's crushing as well, isn't it?
Well, if you go a takes b5, you've now got rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes.
Finish.
Followed by mate.
Yeah.
So the... But
Go on.
I mean, these lines are incredibly hard to calculate because you had to see them at least before you played knight f5, and then we're on move 14. That's several moves later than this, and there's a big branch where you've got black in a situation whereby white has just played rook a d1. So if you imagine knight f5, e takes f5, rook check, bishop e6, queen d6, and then it was knight f6, rook a d1. That becomes really difficult to visualize. That's, I mean, what do you recommend basically for people without this kind of talent if they want to get any further?
Well, it's it's a bit difficult, isn't it? I mean, they have to find a way which works for them.
Yeah. I tend
If that
to do
really is if that is genuinely the case, then they have to certainly look for opening systems which don't allow bewildering complications.
Yeah.
Right from the off, or get them into a position where their weaknesses are exposed. I mean, you have to play to your strengths in chess, don't you? So,
well, yeah, relative strengths. I mean,
that is the thing. You've got to know yourself and then play to it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's much I can say apart from that.
Yeah. And I mean, the area where everybody can, in theory, improve is the end game. The end game is learnable, and I think it tends to be the best chance if people want to improve seriously and cannot get their calculating ability beyond a certain threshold. Then the end game is just about as good as it gets. So, but then of course you need openings, you know, which will give you end games, like the BOGO a go-go.
I think we're dealing with the end of the game here.
Yeah. So here we go.
I think he missed that move.
Yeah.
At the outset.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Yeah, I imagine that's right.
It's difficult to see that attacking retreat, isn't it?
Yeah.
And now
now the bishop re-emerges via b4.
Machine-like, he gobbles everything on offer. Everything.
Well, you just hope he hasn't got enough to checkmate you with at the end. There was actually a chance for Tal to go wrong here with rook a d1 check, which is less convincing apparently.
Well, you need your rook on c1, don't you?
Yeah.
You need your rooks on c1 and d1.
Okay. So this way,
well, he has to take a rook, doesn't he?
Right, yeah. You get another rook, and then there's 3 minor pieces and activity, right? Which, you know, you it's possible to let things slip here with white.
Yep.
So that's why this move.
Nice move. I like that move.
Yeah, it's really. And now the idea is to go rook a. Well, okay. So if black goes here now, then there's check here. There.
Well, we got. Let's take another rook.
This is all given by Tal. This is Tal's analysis.
It looks like one of your complicated variations, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You can't help feeling it has to be a simpler way than this.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that Ullman just resigned through, you know, he was just a bit like fed up of the spectators cheering on Tal. You know,
this position doesn't look too promising for black.
No, not even slightly.
White queen rampaging on the back rank, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's a fantastic game. But I mean, the problem these days is that if everybody, well, not everybody, you know, some of us old timers still aren't preparing our openings as we are supposed to. We just don't like it. But when people start preparing their openings with high power engines, then they will, you know, if they can remember what they prepared, and we're talking now about, you know, the world's top players, we're not talking about club level chess, then they're not going to get into this kind of trouble because, you know, everything would have been worked out beforehand. But if you're a club player, you won't be able to, you know, first of all, you don't have enough time. And then even if you remember loads of lines, your opponent probably won't be able to cooperate. You won't know enough.
You don't have the inclination either. It takes a lot of the enjoyment out of chess. You know, if you're working.
Oh yeah, just you know,
grinding on.
Can you imagine trying to memorize like 1,000 variations of 16 moves depth just in order to play, I don't know, the Slav or something? Yeah, it's just mind numbing. I would much rather do something else. Read a book, learn a language, learn 2 languages.
We better carry on because we've spent a lot of time.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on that. Okay, let's move on to the next game, which Andrew will guide you through. I'll just check what's happening on the chat here.
This was a game between Sam Shankland and Magnus Carlson, and it intrigued me. It was played in Vikensay. Let me call this up. When was it? Yes, it was played in Vikensay this year. And to me, it shows the extent to which Carlson will actually take a risk in a game to try and win. And it featured a line of the Queen's Gambit, the Tarash defense, where Black takes on D4, the von Hennig-Schara Gambit. Now, I think we mentioned this briefly the other day, didn't we, Nigel?
Yeah.
Black has found some new resources in this Gambit. But it is a risky proposition against Shankland. I mean, we're talking about a super grandmaster here. US champion, former US champion. Now, this guy is very strong. And so you better be completely convinced about what you're doing when you play like this. Carlson must have incredible self-belief to play this type of thing against somebody of Shankland's strength. I mean, we know how strong Carlson is, but this is an opening where actually you could get into a pretty poor position early on, and then it wouldn't matter who you were. You'd struggle. So this is the first interesting moment where White plays the check. And the reason he plays the check is to avoid a certain variation, where if he takes on D4, is it now knight C6, Nigel?
Well, that is certainly the old theory. Now, I was going to ask you actually if you knew what the new ideas are.
Well, we'll see that as the game goes on. Now, this is the line which White is supposed to avoid by going Queen A4 check. And this, I think, was a favourite of the old correspondence world champion, Jakob Estrin. And he won some interesting games with this. Obviously, Black's threatening knight B4. Anyway, whether that's good for, I mean, I don't know what the engines say on this. You know, I'm not particularly interested in what they say. But I know that over the board, certainly at lower levels, this will be difficult to defend for White. I mean, I don't think theory thinks much of it, but nevertheless, why go into that? Why give Black that option when you can avoid it altogether by giving the check? And the logic of that is the bishop now comes to D7, and now he can't play to E6 a bit later on. So now White takes the pawn. Okay, so on we go. Queen takes. And now I think the next move is relatively uncharted, isn't it? This knight F6 move. Don't they normally go knight C6?
Yeah.
And then White's got some moves. So I don't know why. I don't know why this move has come to the forefront. I mean, most players in this position have moved their queen, but they didn't take on B7. I mean, that's got to be the critical move, hasn't it? I mean, if I ran this through the engines this morning, they were showing +1 to White in this variation. So, and then Black goes knight C6 here. And then I think White's got to go bishop F4 to stop rook B8. And then Black chooses between rook C8 or bishop B4. But either of those moves were still showing an advantage to White on my engine. Now, there's nothing difficult there for White in those moves. So you have to suppose that Carlson's found something in this variation. The question is, what is it?
A better engine?
Well, probably, but that's a serious move. Queen takes B7, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
A bishop C6
engine's not material. I mean,
apparently that's not as good as knight C6. So there we are, and well, in this game, Shankland retreated his queen, so he bottled it. He didn't take on B7. Or he might have known what was wrong with it. I don't know what's wrong with it personally, but
well, the top players, I think, in general, are using cloud engines. They're using like really powerful engines that are remotely hosted.
So you don't think there's any element of bluff here?
Well, there might be, but there's some pretty serious computing power going into sharp variations now, which is another good reason to play 1 G3 followed by 2 B3.
Put all your pawns in the third rank. Yeah, that's it.
Or even 1 B3 followed by 2 G3.
No, but we're not talking about a level where, I mean, this is Super Grandmaster level. So, well, on with the game anyway. Now Black played knight a6. Again, a strange looking move, but he's coming to c5 to gain a bit of time. Knight f3, in he comes. Back we go. Rook to c8. You know, you can't help feeling by not taking on b7. You know, white has given Black a more comfortable game than he deserves. I mean, maybe in the future, you know, they'll take on b7. I don't know. Is Carlson bluffing here? He can't be bluffing, can he? He wouldn't.
I wouldn't have thought so.
But it's just strange that they didn't go queen takes b7. I'll be interested to know if anybody out there in the audience knows what's wrong with that. My machine thinks it's good for white, but there you go.
Yeah, well, it's I can actually. I'm just going to start up my.
There are loads of games with this, by the way. It was a line played by just low-rated players for a long while. So maybe it's just been rehabilitated, like you say, with all these cloud engines, you know, whirring away. So there we are. So Black's getting compensation, and I would imagine now he's got enough for the pawn, wouldn't you say?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Well, he's got a lot of freedom of movement. It's going to take white quite a long time to get developed. There are lines of there are old lines of the von Hennig-Schara gambit where even in the knight c6 variation, what is it? Something like this. Let me see. Something like this.
I've just put the line into my.
This is the main line of the von Hennig-Schara, and now Black normally castles on the queen side or plays g5.
White scores miserably after bishop f4, bishop b4. By the way,
white scores miserably.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what's happening with that, but he certainly doesn't score well.
Let's come to that, because this is the way that Black can play. He can play it slightly differently for positional pressure. It's like a reverse Mora gambit, isn't it? Where Black's going to put his rooks on d8 and c8. I mean, that's not that easy for white to defend. So going back to the game itself, you say that after queen takes b7,
yeah, knight c6, bishop f4,
yeah,
bishop b4,
yeah,
and then what do you play there? Is it?
Well, is it time to get some pieces out? I'm not sure. This must be the. I mean, rook c1, I guess. I don't know.
Okay, so you go rook c1. Oh, sorry, not castles. Rook c1.
Knight d5 or something like that.
Black goes knight d5. So my engine is already giving this as much better for Black.
Okay.
And then bishop d2. Even it wants to play knight c7 then.
To trap the queen.
Trap the queen, yeah. Oh no, it wants to go a6. It's repeating the position, sorry. It's gaining time on the clock. So it goes a6.
Okay, so clearly, how many games have we got with that line? You've got a lot of games?
I'm just checking here. So bishop d2 is out of book. Bishop f4, bishop b4. Rook c1 has never been played. In the database that I am looking at, hang on, maybe I'll have to get a different one. Right, the moves to have been played are e3, bishop c7, a3, and knight f3. After
bishop b4,
yeah,
I've also got an engine running on this. Apparently, you're supposed to go a3.
Right. A3 is the move that's suggested here as well. Bishop takes, pawn takes, queen a5.
Yeah.
Also better for Black.
Hanging the rook.
Yeah, hanging the rook.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you saw it here, maybe not first, but we're trying our best. It's a bit of a labyrinth.
If you we probably don't have the very best technology. I have actually. I had a little trial. I was given a free trial on one of the cloud engines, and you know, I tried it. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It wasn't that different to the setup I've got, because I built my own computer and I put quite a bit of RAM into it, and it wasn't coming to massively different conclusions than what I have in front of me now.
No, but of course, the game at this level is decided by fine margins, isn't it?
Yeah.
So although it might not be massively different, even the slightest difference makes a difference.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't go into sharp lines, you know, on the base of this, but I'm just bored by it anyway.
Yeah, it kind of negates the whole object of self-expression in chess when you're using engines all the time, you know, and you don't need to think. You just just press buttons.
Well, it's just a totally different game now, because it changes the whole lifestyle and the expectations and everything, you know, because I think when we were doing chess very seriously as players, then you know, a lot was about the travel and the you know, the bars freedom. And whatever, restaurants, freedom. So now you're like tied to this computer all the time.
Well, if you're playing at a high level, yeah. Anyway, let's crack on. Magnus has now got excellent compensation for the pawn. Yeah, it's all about freedom of movement, isn't it? I mean, you know, White's still got to catch up with development. His pawn on c3, that's the extra pawn, is feeble. It's weak. Of course, it can be defended, but Shankland didn't defend it. Instead, he concentrated on getting his pieces out. Well, I think that was a good decision, don't you think, Nigel? I mean, I think unless Magnus has got a really good move here.
Well, there were probably all sorts of things going on, you know. It was looking very dangerous for White. You know, I would certainly want to get castled.
Well, yes, that bishop takes c3 is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, White's slightly ahead in development after bishop takes c3, because black is a castle.
Is there some threat of bishop a4? Is that the idea? A very strange move.
I think so, yeah.
Which limits
a4, then queen d2 and knight takes a2. No, surely not.
No, I don't think so. But it does put the queen on an uncomfortable square. I mean, I'm just wondering whether knight d5 actually picks off the queen there. No, it doesn't. He can go queen.
Go to e2.
Well, anyway, you can see there's a lot of complications going on. So Shankland just tries to find some sort of secure way to get fully developed. And now we get a position, really, which is far more balanced than before. Black's got a bishop pair, queenside pawn majority. White's got some open lines, and he's starting to mobilize his central pawn majority. If I was asked to assess this position without using an engine, I would say Black slightly for choice, but at the same time, White has chances. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you got a central pawn, so you might, you know, it's always nice to have a central pawn when your opponent doesn't.
I mean, central pawn moves forward.
Yeah.
Bishop comes back to e7. Yeah, I think White has given himself the maximum possible chance to get something out of this game. I mean, he's centralizing his pieces. The central pawn is cramping Black to an extent. Long term, the bishop pair is a big trump, of course, but it remains to see whether Magnus can use it. Well, is that bailing out, or is that the start of a big attack here?
What's happened if you take with the pawn on e6 instead of the bishop?
Does that matter? Knight takes e6. Wouldn't that transpose?
I was wondering. Yeah, I was wondering if you could do.
I mean, it helps that the white queen's protected, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think it matters.
I think that would probably transpose.
Yeah.
And now this position is looking it's still sharp. I mean, opposite colour bishop middle games. If you've got the initiative, this counts for something. Who's got the initiative here? F2 is looking a little bit exposed. I mean, obviously, black's going to go here. Whose king is safer? It's not totally clear, is it?
There's some danger in some endgames with a black rook on the 7th and F2 being weak.
Yeah.
That white could get tied down.
It's quite difficult for black to get a rook to the 7th, isn't it? I suppose you could go rook d7 and then force his bishop to move and then go rook d2, but it's white to move. And now white threatens mate.
Yeah, anchor the bishop on c5 with b6, which is, I think, what happens later, isn't it?
And then black can free up his rooks. So we're reaching a position where, you know, Magnus, this is the sort of thing he starts to show his phenomenal strength, isn't it? Sort of technical position.
Yeah. Well, he stopped queen g6. His last move stopped queen g6 by white. So it's a defensive move.
This was quite important.
Yeah.
So just going back here, he had to defend his bishop, and now black stops queen g6. So there's all sorts of little tactical asides going on. White frees up the back rank. Black anchors the bishop, as you said. Bishop comes back. Is that to defend on f3?
Yeah, probably to block the f file. Given that rook f3, he's not going to. I think black is probably slightly better now.
Well, that's another good move, isn't it?
So white bails. White is trying to make a draw now.
Well, you can't blame him, can you? But I think that's just a good move, isn't it? Yeah. Well, unless black can generate some pressure here against f2, this is heading towards a draw, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, white has got a potential threat of a back rank mate, and that explains g5. Because if you could have played rook d8 with the pawn back on g7, it's mate.
And that was that.
Yeah. Well, interesting game.
Yeah, interesting game, a draw in the end, but a lot of interesting points about that game for the chess community to explore. The use of the von Hennig-Schara gambit, it has to be risky, but well, Magnus didn't seem to come under any pressure, so it may be worth having a look at that game in more detail a bit later on if you're interested in this gambit. I think
Grishuk is he's been playing, or he played the Hennig von Schara in a few games. He'd been playing around with the Cloud Engine and found that there were a lot of resources for black, and now they've all piled in. It's become a real fashion.
There's somebody at the door, Nigel. Can you briefly start off the last game?
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on now to the third game we're going to look at today. And for this one, we could do with going back to the start of the game. So we just need to. It ended in a white win, as you can probably see. Right. This is Dwayne Jones against Richard Bates. Dwayne Jones, of course, is one of the UK's top players, one of England's top players, and he's playing against a pretty strong Richard Bates, who's pretty much always there or thereabouts when he plays in the British Championship. So we have a Sicilian, and now Jones plays a line that I've played myself, D3, and the idea behind D3 is to play a kind of reversed closed position. If you play C4 E5, this is quite well known, knight C3, then going D6. But it's less usual when you're white to go here. And I think it's because a lot of people would see this as surrendering the initiative. So I had a period of playing this. After knight c6, I used to play g3 here. Right. Now, if you play f4, that really announces that you're okay with an endgame that arises like this. Well, white can certainly play on, but I'm not sure it's very much. So,
well, he has the advantage of avoiding Sicilian theory, doesn't it? Getting to a position where you can actually, if you like these sort of technical sort of things, you can play to your strengths.
Yeah, this pawn on c5 would prefer to be back on c7 or even on c6, because when you put it here, there's a slight weakness of d5, and if you support it with b6, then your light squares on the queen side can become weak. So probably it is marginally better for white.
Yeah,
and as such represents a reasonable way to counter the Sicilian. Knight f3, bishop g7, and here I would be playing g3.
Yeah,
but he plays bishop e2.
Larson used to play like this, didn't he?
Yeah.
What's wrong with it? Nothing. It's just a reverse Dutch, isn't it?
Yeah. And he would get it via 2f4, and then his opponent playing probably g6. But he also played this with black against the English. So he's just getting a playable position where white will have some attacking chances on the king side because of his space there.
Actually, would you mind if I just drop back a second?
Yeah,
that's the start here. They often get into this these days via this move, bishop e2. That's another very provocative move. Ultimately aiming for the same setup as the one you've just mentioned, but it's a bit more provocative. And that's also getting decent results for white. It looks like a very strange looking move, but it's quite logical. Just wait to see what black's going to do, and white will follow up with d3 and f4.
Larson tried that in a few of his last experiments against the Sicilian. He was playing bishop e2.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, if black tries to open up the game like this, then white just settles for some sort of edge here, and he's going to play this Scandinavian, where black's played this move c5. So white is whipping up a quick advantage in development here. So that's probably not advisable for black.
So after knight c6, you're going to play f4 still?
You could do, yes. I don't see anything wrong with that. You could go d3, couldn't you?
Yeah, or even c3.
So all sorts of little nooks and crannies to get your teeth into. Okay, back to the game.
Okay, so knight f3, bishop g7, bishop e2, and black goes d6. White castles, black plays bishop g4. And this looks like it's going to give up the pair of bishops with bishop takes f3. Probably, if I was white here, I would want to play c3.
Yeah.
And then get the bishops and still have my dart squares protected. But queen e1 was played instead. And
well, that looks logical, because if he takes and goes knight d4, you've got bishop d1, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's another way of playing it. So you could do c3 and knight a3. That would be a reasonable way to play. But queen e1, it makes sense as well.
And easy to play. I mean, this is a good recipe for the club player, isn't it? Doesn't want to spend the midnight oil, burning the midnight oil, wondering what to play against a Sicilian. You just get a reverse Dutch and go for the attack on the king side. Pretty straightforward, isn't it, to play?
Yeah, and you don't need to memorize thousands of variations to play it. Now we get this very interesting move, c4.
What I found interesting about this game was the extent to which Richard Bates, I mean, he's normally a very solid sort of player, is provoked into taking action slightly too early. This move c4, something slightly untrustworthy about that at this early stage.
Yeah.
Simply because white's king is safe and black's king is still in the middle. It's the same old recipe, story, isn't it?
It could be that he was concerned about the attack and wanted to get counterplay really early. So that sort of egged him on into trying to generate some play right at the start of the game. Yeah.
It's not totally clear how black equalises here. I mean, not at all.
No.
Maybe he could go e6. So it's a strange looking move, but
yeah, the problem if you go e6 after bishop g4 is that when white then later plays f5, your light squares can become weak. So if you're exchanging off this bishop, I would prefer to have the pawn back on e7. Personally.
Well, if I'm playing e6, I'm hoping he's never going to play f5, to be absolutely honest with you. put my knight on e7 and pray it all stands together.
Yeah. But if you play f5 with black as well, then e6 can still become weak along the e file.
Well, that's true.
So I'm, you know, a bit suspicious about that. He might have been taken by surprise as well. This is now this looks very, very risky. Bishop takes b2.
It's really asking for it.
Yeah, because now the black king is several moves away from castling kingside, where it would be safer, and he's behind in development, which is always going to be very risky. And now knight f6. I think this is an important note. You say that white can then play e5. Takes rook b1. Takes bishop d1. So this reminds me a little bit of the Tal game with the bishop d2. You know, this bishop retreat, and also the black king being caught in the center. Well, it's probably like a lot of other games as well.
I remember commentating on this game. It was at the British Championship in Sheffield, and it just felt all the way through that black had perhaps gone into action one or two moves too soon.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, he's getting into trouble because his king's in the middle. It's not difficult to understand. Richard perhaps hoped he would calculate his way out of it, but it doesn't seem that way, does it?
No.
Jones is absolutely deadly when he gets onto the attack.
But he calculates so quickly.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. You know, he just sees things fantastically quickly. I mean, there's a few players like that. So I understand Vacher de Grave. Grishuk was waxing lyrical about how quick Maxime sees stuff, you know, and that he was very slow by comparison. You know, I think Grishuk's probably pretty darn fast, you know, but you know, Vacher de Grave is like in another league altogether. Well, this looks very, very dangerous for black's king because he's still not castled. And you want to play knight f6 here, but then I think e5 will probably blow him out of water.
Disaster strikes.
Yeah. So
White's fully developed and has a safe king, and black is neither fully developed nor has a safe king. So it's not difficult to understand what's going on.
That's a good way to retreat your only developed piece apart from the queen.
Well, he's setting him up for the next game.
Rook takes b7, knight d4, knight d5. Yeah, well, I can understand that move. Wants to check on c7, and also knight f6 now will lose the e7 pawn. Rook c8. Rook takes a7. That does seem quite materialistic to me.
I think he's making room for the queen rather than taking a pawn. Queen b1 to b7, isn't it?
Yeah, there is that. And you put in a note here as well. Rook b4, queen c5, queen a1, e5, rook b7. Which also looks pretty good. This knight can't get out now.
Soften up his 7th rank.
Yeah. So rook
it's hard
c8.
to criticize. It's hard to criticize what Gawain did, actually.
Well, we have to say something. I always struggle with games like this because you don't want to sort of stick the boot into the loser and say, oh, that was an awful move. Oh, you know, he's done it again. You know, so you try and find improvements for the winner, but it's not an easy job, as you quite rightly pointed out. So queen b1. Yeah, the big issue is just development again. Queen c5, queen b7.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Queen c6, and now we get a spectacular finish.
Yeah, the finish is beautiful.
Yeah. So you've got to go to d7, otherwise you just lose the queen. Or you lose the exchange with rook takes c7. It's also completely lost. And now we have this move. king takes, pawn to e5, discovered check from the bishop on f3, king b6, and here we go. I would have been checking this for about 2 minutes. Rook b1 check. You know, can I really play rook
superb
b1
finish?
check?
It is superb.
Yeah.
Pope feeling.
Assuming I'd seen it at all, right? Which is also a, you know, I don't know. King takes a7, rook b7, mate.
Magnificent.
Yeah, and a fantastic win. So there we go. 23 moves in a Sicilian with 2d3. You know, who needs the main lines when you've got 2d3 available? Right. Well, that brings us to the end of today's game. So I would urge people, please follow us on Twitch, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and like the videos if you don't mind. And also the masterchesswebshow.com has got a contact form with which you can send us any questions.
Yeah, I think this is really important. Also, some feedback would be good.
Because we're running our shows in the morning when like everybody is either at work or asleep. And so most of these are going to be recordings anyway, for people. You know, if we get enough live followers to you know, just to get a little bit in the chat. I don't think we checked the chat today, but is there any chat? There is no chat. I just put in one small message. So we're not going to get a lot of chat. So please do message us via the contact form on masterchesswebshow.com, and then we can try and tailor the shows according to what people are interested in.
Also, encourage your friends to sign up. If you've got any chess playing friends or acquaintances, get them to watch our shows.
Well, we don't have any special offers. You know, sign somebody up. You know, get 2 Master Chess web shows for free. but hopefully, you know, hopefully it'll be interesting enough. So yeah. Okay, so it's a goodbye from me and a goodbye from him.
Yeah, farewell and see you next week.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.